So welcome everyone. As you are entering the webinar, please feel free to type your name and an organization in the chat box so we know who you are. So this is a webinar on using the Teaching Fractions Toolkit to support evidence-based instruction in 6th grade. We'll start in a minute. All right. I see people are still signing in. So we'll give them one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, let's get started. So welcome again, everyone. This is a webinar on using the Teaching Fractions Toolkit to support evidence-based instruction on 6th grade. Next slide, please, Melinda. So the webinar is hosted by the Teaching Fractions Toolkit Partnership at the Regional Educational Lab Midwest, REL Midwest. My name is Imei Wan, and I'm the Partnership Director, and I'm also the Principal Investigator for the Teaching Fractions Toolkit Evaluation Study. With me today is my colleague, Melinda Griffin, who is the partnership manager, and Melinda is a math education expert, and she's also a former classroom teacher. Next slide. Before we start, I do want to note that we will be recording today's webinar, and the recording will be archived on the REL Midwest website. We will be sending out an email letting you know when the recording is available. So this is the American Institutes for Research, which is the organization that manages REL Midwest. And this is our standard recording notice. Next slide. So here's the brief agenda for today. I will start with a brief introduction of who we are and why we are here today. Melinda then will take over to highlight some effective strategies for teaching fractions on which the Teaching Fractions Toolkit is built. She will then elaborate on how the Teaching Fraction Toolkit is designed to help teachers enact evidence-based strategies, followed by a preview of the toolkit. We will then share some information about an opportunity for districts and schools to gain early access to the Teaching Fractions Toolkit by participating in a study to help us evaluate the toolkit. We will close with the Q&A session. So you will have an opportunity to unmute yourself once during the webinar and also at the end of the webinar to ask questions directly to the presenters. But during the webinar, please also feel free to enter your question in the chat box. And we have people who are monitoring the chat box, and we will be answering your question as the webinar is going on. Next slide. So today's webinar is hosted by REL Midwest. So REL Midwest is part of a network of 10 regional education labs funded by the Institute of Education Sciences, the research arm of the U.S. Department of Education. So REL Midwest works with educators in Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin to support the use of evidence and data to improve student outcomes. In particular, we seek to address priorities related to the needs and outcomes of students who are furthest from opportunity. Next slide. So the webinar features the Teaching Fractions Toolkit, which includes a suite of new professional development resources and supports designed to help teachers learn and implement evidence-based strategies in fractions instruction. In the last 2.5 years, REL Midwest has worked collaboratively with educators from a few Illinois schools and districts to develop, test, and refine the toolkit. During the 24-25 school year, we will be conducting a study to further evaluate the efficacy of the toolkit, professional development, and resources. Through participating in the study, your grade 6 math teachers will receive free professional development on evidence-based instructions. And teachers also will receive other classroom resources to support their implementation of those strategies, such as like free interactive apps, assessment ropes, and student tasks. School and district leaders will receive resources that will help them support teachers. This is also an opportunity for districts to build capacity for future professional development. Districts will have the opportunity to send their local staff to be trained as co-facilitators so that they can, going forward, facilitate PD on themselves. So we will share a little bit more information later in the webinar about how to become involved in the study. But before that, I'd like to turn it over to Melinda, who will share more about practical strategies that are featured in the toolkit. Melinda also will provide a preview of the toolkit. Melinda, now here.
Thanks, Jinmei. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to be teaching some about fractions. I have to admit, I love fractions as a former math teacher. We're going to be starting off by thinking about what strategies are effective for teaching fractions. I think a good question to lead that off is, why fractions? Why are we worried about fractions? So we know that US students' math skills have fallen short compared to our international counterparts for many years. And the pandemic has exacerbated that as well. So fractions are often a topic in math that shows great underperformance and often leads to difficulties as students make a transition to the middle grades. When they go to middle school, the focus shifts from fractions to ratios and proportions, but is building upon the fraction knowledge that students develop in elementary school. What I'm telling you now is not new. You all know that students need to master for those fractions to make that successful transition. You've likely experienced this in your own classroom in working with students. As a teacher, teaching fractions is sometimes frustrating. Oftentimes students have difficulty understanding that fractions are numbers too. And that much of what they've learned in working with whole numbers can actually be transferred to fractions, but they've got to come to see fractions as numbers in and of themselves. We also know that teachers benefit greatly from having additional strategies to teach fractions and to build student understanding of how to work with them. We know that visualization is an important tool when learning fractions. And so part of our goal with this toolkit is to give you some tools around that to help your students understand fractions better. So the work that we're going to look at today is from a What Works Clearinghouse practice guide. If you're not familiar with these, What Works Clearinghouse presents recommendations for educators to help address challenges in their classroom. This is based on reviews of research, opinions of experts, and the experiences of practitioners like yourselves. So this toolkit supports the practice guide, Developing Effective Fractions Instruction for kindergarten through 8th grade, as you see here. There are 5 recommendations that are talked about in this practice guide. The first one is build on students' informal understanding of sharing and proportionality to develop initial fraction concepts. So this is what we often see early on with students in school, even prior to 3rd grade, which is where the second recommendation often comes in, helping students recognize that fractions are numbers and that they expand the number system beyond whole numbers. So this is where students begin to more formally understand and use fractions. The third recommendation is to help students understand why procedures for computations with fractions make sense. We all know and can probably remember things that we learned very procedurally in math that then make it difficult to work with later on. So our goal is to have kids understand the why behind the operations that we do with fractions. We also have a recommendation that we should develop students' conceptual understanding for strategies for solving ratio, rate, and proportion problems before exposing them to cross multiplication as a procedure to use to solve such problems. So once again, having an understanding of what's going on, particularly in contextual types of scenarios, is really helpful for students as opposed to just, here's the trick I do to solve this. And the fifth recommendation from the practice guide deals with teachers. And it says professional development programs should place a high priority on improving teachers' understandings of fractions and how to teach them. The way fractions are presented to students now and the way we help students get at fractions more conceptually may very well not be the way we learned fractions ourselves. I know it's very different from what I saw when I was a child. So the more that we can work with teachers and help them have a chance to learn and grow and understand fractions themselves, the better off this will be in the classroom with their students. I'm going to focus on two recommendations from the practice guide today. And these are the recommendations that a lot of our toolkit is focused on. So the first one is recommendation 3, help students understand why procedures for computations with fractions make sense. Here's a practical strategy that goes along with this. Tape diagrams are helpful when considering the whole versus part relationship that's often found in contextual problems. So recommendation 3 talks about visually representing fraction operations through the use of area models, number lines, and other visual representations to improve conceptual understanding of more formal computational procedures. When we use a visualization, this allows students to estimate or judge the reasonableness of their answers. So in our toolkit, we delve into how teachers can use these visualizations to address some common misconceptions that come up in the classroom. We know that using real-world context with plausible numbers is helpful to students because as they make a connection of the context with the math itself, students will have a greater chance of retaining knowledge of what that computation means. So you see here a problem where students are thinking about, this is a common problem you would see. There's 5 glasses of orange juice. If a serving size is 3/5 of a glass, how many servings of orange juice do we have? So you see the tape diagram here drawn out. We see the 5 whole glasses of orange juice shown, and then students begin to draw a separate fraction bar underneath to think about, if I have servings, how many servings will be in that whole? By showing both quantities together, students can start to make sense of the problem. We might have some students that catch on right away and kind of see what the pattern is. You might have some students that need to draw it out all the way to the end to get to their answer, but they then can take the drawing and relate what they have visualized for this to what that looks like in terms of fractions and the operation that happened to get there. I think this is particularly important for misconceptions that often come up with students around fractions. Students often learn hints in the earlier grades, particularly when they're doing whole number computations. So things like when you multiply 2 numbers, the product is always bigger, or when you divide, you get a smaller number, but these don't hold up when you move on to fractions. And so providing a visualization for students along with the operation itself helps them see what's actually going on in the problem. Moving on to recommendation number 4, develop students' conceptual understanding of strategies for solving ratio, rate, and proportion problems before exposing them to cross multiplication as a procedure to use to solve such problems. So we have a practical strategy here that when solving rate problems, you can consider using a double number line to help visualize time versus distance. I like this one in particular because I think double number lines are something that often are not as familiar to teachers, but they make great sense when it comes to solving problems such as this. So when students enter the middle grades, knowledge of fractions is forming that foundation for it. So the more we can do to help them see conceptually what's going on, the better. We explore the use of number lines and area models quite a bit in our toolkit to help kids understand the conceptual background behind operations. The last part of this recommendation too suggests providing opportunities for students to use and discuss alternative strategies for solving ratio, rate, and proportion problems. So what we see here is one example of a double number line where the student has miles on the top and they're comparing miles to the number of hours it takes to go those miles. We often see problems like this, like you need to go from here to there and you're going to ride your bike or you're going to take a car and it takes this long. So this helps the students see both quantities. One child might put miles on top, another child might put miles on the bottom. So you have different ways of visualizing it, but both of them help with the comparison of those two quantities. This also aligns with mathematical practice standards, in which we're asking students to persevere in problem solving, asking students to justify their own reasoning, and also to critique the reasoning of others. So when students use visualizations to solve problems, this gives them another tool to be able to talk with others about what they have done. Through discussions with others, they can help build their own understanding, think about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. I think this is also a great estimation tool for students too. And the understanding that they are going to get conceptually from working with visualizations is really critical to moving into work further on in math beyond middle school. For example, when we get to functions in high school algebra, and also exploring similar figures in trigonometric ratios in high school geometry. So similar to the strategy of using a tape diagram, a double number line is useful when solving rate problems, as we see here. In this example, we see them comparing things directly. We could use this same approach. Maybe we have two riders that are both trying to get to the same destination. Who's going to get there first? All we would need to do is add another number line under there for the other rider, and we can still use that to compare the quantities across the board. All right, let's move on and think about some additional evidence-based strategies that we're going to see in the toolkit itself. So the toolkit components were co-developed, tested, and revised based on educator feedback. We had a great group of teachers from Illinois who've been working with us on the toolkit up to this point. There's teacher supports in here that are specifically focused for grade 6 teachers. Our thought being grade 6 is where we make that transition from fractions to ratios, rates, and proportions. So that's a good place to do some solidification of fraction understanding. There's also leader supports included in here as well, which addresses fraction strategies across grade levels, since administrators focus on more than one grade level. Within the toolkit, there are 6 professional development modules. And if you look at these, you see kind of the building of fraction understanding. We start with module 1, which talks about fractions on a number line. From there, we move on to understanding fraction addition and subtraction. And our third module is understanding fraction multiplication and division. Okay. In module 4, we get kind of a mixture of those and implementation of fraction computation overall. And modules 5 and 6 focus on understanding rate, ratio, and proportion and implementing those in problem solving. Each of the modules that you find in the toolkit include the same things. So each module has an exploration of math tasks included. There's some student work analysis. There's lesson planning and implementation guidance. There's a use of online interactive apps. And we also include a teacher reflection tool and formative assessments that can be used with students as well. One of my favorite parts of the module are the exploration of math tasks. They're tasks that you could use with your student in the classroom, but the teachers themselves get to actually experience the tasks, talk through them, work through them with other people. As part of the professional development. I think that's hugely helpful for teachers. They get to see what's going on. They get to build their own confidence with working with those fractions. And I know from teachers we've worked with so far, they found that part hugely beneficial. Each of the modules follows a similar structure as well. The module spans about 2 weeks, and there are 2 facilitated meetings that happen synchronously. And then there's some other activities to be completed between the meetings. So for example, you'll see for module 1, fractions on a number line. This has a focus on recommendation 2, emphasizing number lines. There's an initial meeting that happens where you come together, do some work. There'll be some interim activities that people complete individually. and then you come back together again for a second meeting as part of that module. We also have supports for leaders as well, because we know for professional development, we need buy-in from administrators as much as possible to make sure things continue to be a focus at a school. So leaders will find informational videos and handouts that they can use to help them understand the training that their teachers are going through. There's also a monitoring conditions checklist. This is not meant to be an evaluation. It's meant to be a chance for the administrator to go into classrooms, see what's happening, and see where they can further support teachers in their learning. And there's also professional development facilitation materials with each of these modules as well. Oftentimes an administrator wears more than one hat. So they may be the people that need to actually present the materials with their teachers. It's also there in case there's a school-based math coach or perhaps a lead teacher or someone who wants to pick this up and work with a group at the school. All right, so let's take a peek at the toolkit itself. So within the professional development modules, there's several components. We have a detailed facilitator guide. There are 2 slide decks that are already developed for leading those meetings with teachers. There are participant workbooks that teachers will have to do the work and thinking as they go through the process, and then the teacher reflection tool as well. So this is an example of a facilitator guide that we have. And within it, you see an agenda and resources for leading this meeting. This is a kickoff meeting with teachers for Module 1. If you look to the other side, you'll see kind of a walkthrough of here's what's happening, but also some guidance on the right-hand side around things that might come up during the meeting that they need to address with teachers, hints for moving the thinking forward where they need to, and sometimes just some background information on why this is happening now. So this is hugely helpful. As someone who facilitates a lot of things, having a guide to what you need to do is always much appreciated. We also have participant workbooks for each of the teachers. So a teacher will have within the workbook the handouts. This might be something they use later with their students as well, but they have a dedicated place to do the work themselves. Often there's room to actually solve or do the task, and then some questions for reflection that go along with it. You also see interim activities there on the right. Here's some things that we're asking teachers to do in the meantime between the first meeting and the second meeting this module. And there's a way there for them to actually be able to click through and track what they have done. There's also links to be able to get to different activities that they need to access. There are also slide decks for the meetings. You see some examples of these here. Nice, bright, and bold visuals of the different examples that you're putting in front of teachers. It can be very helpful to be able to put this up in front of a whole group, or perhaps if you have people joining virtually, they can pull it up on their own screen to be able to see the things that they're looking at. And there's formative assessment handouts. Teachers work through this themselves, but these are tools they can use in the classroom with their students. This one here is about locating fractions on a number line, and you'll see there's a multiple choice selection there on the left. So students have a place to do the work. This can help teachers really get at our students understanding the concept, and if not, what is the misconception that's happening? And so you'll see these activities build in terms of cognitive difficulty, which helps you see perhaps where a student is starting to veer off the path, which makes it much, much easier to do some intervention with them and help them get back on track. There's also some interactive apps that are found within this. And I'm going to switch my screen here for a minute and actually show you what these look like. These are still in beta testing, I will say. So they're not ready for public consumption quite yet, but we thought we'd give you a sneak preview anyway. So let me stop sharing here and I will switch over to the screen that we need to see and show you what these look like. All right, so our first one is locating fractions on a number line. Let me move some things around here so I can see what's going on as well. So in this case, students can put some fractions on the number line. They have a chance to move them around, like maybe I put this here and then I go, wait, no, I think maybe it belongs over here. I can check the locations and see which ones I have right, which ones I don't. if I can then uncheck it and keep working if I need to. Maybe I move this one here and I want to check again. So it looks like I still have some things going on. I can get a hint if I need to. And there's multiple problems in here as well too that I can look at with different fractions. The next one is comparing rational numbers. So this one is interesting in that I can start off with the bare fractions, I guess you would say, the naked numbers. And maybe I say, okay, I'm going to compare 1/2 to 1/3. And I might have a student who says, well, I think 1/3 is greater because 3 is bigger than 2. This is something that often comes up when students start working with unit fractions. So maybe I do the answer and I go, wow, 1/2 is bigger. I wonder why. I can come down here and I can also look at an area model of this. And this can make it much more apparent why 1/2 is bigger than the 1/3. Okay. I might also want to look at it on a number line and think about it that way. So it's a nice way to bring all of the different visualizations as well as the more abstract fractions that we're used to seeing in a classroom all together in one space for students to be able to look at and compare. Now let's say we've looked at those unit fractions, but maybe I want to look at some other fractions. So I can drag this, only go up to a whole, but maybe I want to look at, say, 2/9. And what do we pick over here? We can do the same. Maybe I want to look at different denominators again, 2/5. Okay. Now, maybe instead of looking at an answer right away, let's look at the area model of it. So when I do this, once again, if I still have a student who's thinking that bottom number is bigger, that means everything is bigger. And they can now see that 9ths is actually referring to a whole that's divided up into 9 different parts. And 5ths, same thing, a whole, but divided into 5 parts. So in this case, I can see 2/5 is bigger. I can also drag this bar back and forth if I need to be able to talk about different parts of this. And once again, I can look at it on a number line. This can be helpful in that if I have students who are thinking about benchmark fractions, I can pull up this number line. We can think about, here's our 1/2 spot. How do these two numbers relate to 1/2? Both of them are less than 1/2, but how much less than 1/2? There's directions on here as well, in case you need directions. And I know within our toolkit development as well, using the apps is part of the professional development, and there's some really great screenshots and instructions that go along with these to help you use them on your own and then in your classroom as well. All right, let me come back to our PowerPoint and we will keep on moving here. All right. Oh, make sure I got the right one. I do not. Let me stop share and go back to the actual PowerPoint this time. All right, bear with me for technical difficulties. Are there any questions we want to take while I'm messing with this on the side?
I just
Have you
wanted to
seen
say, Melinda, and jump in. I think the PowerPoint's sharing correctly for us, how you had it just now. The screen looked fine.
Okay.
But I know it's hard to see from the back end what all is showing.
Yeah, I was not seeing it at all on my end, but that's okay. I'll share with what you all need to see instead. So let me come back to that again. Share my screen. All right. My only problem is I cannot move the slides forward now.
You click on that?
Say it again, you may.
I mean, can you click on the slides and see whether it advances?
Yeah, just a second here. All right, let's try this one more time. Anyone who knows me knows that I am the Bermuda Triangle of technology. And so this should not be shocking that things aren't working. All right, let me come back to the actual presentation itself, and we'll try this again. Or if someone else from our team wants to share at this point, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I can answer. It's our question about a time commitment for the program. I can answer that one. So as Melinda mentioned, there are 6 PD modules. So with the exception of the module 1, for each module, like it's 1 hour for the first meeting and 1 hour for the second meeting. And then within the interactivities, we expect it will probably take teachers 2 hours. So module 1, the first meeting will probably be longer with 2 hours, then meeting 2 will still be 1 hour. So in total, it's 13 hours of like meeting time, synchronous meeting, or depending on your district preference, could be in-person meeting. So it's 30 hours meeting time plus 12 hours of like interim activities for the PD.
All right. Does this look good, Yinmei? Or did I
Yes.
fix the wrong one again? Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. So what, 5th or 6th time was the charm here? All right.
So
on this screen, you see some testimonials from teachers that we've worked with in Illinois during the usability study. I'll let you take a read of those for just a minute. I would say they had a really positive experience with this. We always learn a lot from the educators we work with as well. So we also enjoyed the process too.
Melinda, we are seeing the normal view. It's not the like the presentation view, the slide view. Okay.
I'm going to stop sharing then.
I
Emily
can share
or
my
Vilma?
screen.
Yeah,
Melinda, I have it pulled up.
that sounds good, Mia, because we're going to switch over to Yinmei as well. And we do have some time for questions here if anyone has questions so far. If not, we can do some at the end too.
Hey, is that showing up right for everyone?
Yes.
Perfect. And just let me know whenever you're ready for us to go ahead.
Yeah, Melinda, we do have some question.
Okay.
There is a question, is there a different way to teach and not use cross multiplication? I have seen many mistakes because students have been taught their cross multiplication. I think Will Johnston here have some provide some good discussions here, but I wonder if you have any additional thoughts on that as well.
I will say that Tad always has great wisdom around fractions because we work together sometimes too. And thinking about his kids make that transition from fractions to proportions, I would always do what I called word fractions with my students, which would be setting up the actual quantities, but to the side having like, what are the two things we're comparing in words? And then let's think about how much we have of this one, how much we have of that one. It would help them think about where is the unknown in the whole situation themselves. So I think that can be beneficial before you just go to trying to write the proportion itself. It kind of gives a little bit of a scaffold to think through it on their own. And I'm trying to look at the chat now. Tad, what else did you have in there that was good, right? Oh, yes, so finding the factor needed for equivalence. That says much more eloquently than I did. All right. There was a question, why not just make ones by multiplying both sides by 15 in your first example? So that's a question. All right. Should we go ahead and keep moving, Yinmei? Or
Yes, we can.
Okay.
All right, Mia, we can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, we will be conducting a study in the 2024 to 25 school year to evaluate the efficacy of the toolkit. So findings from this study also will be used to help us further improve the toolkit. So the toolkit resources will be available to the general public after the study and after everything is finalized. But by participating in the study, schools and districts will have an opportunity to gain early access to the toolkit and start to use it now to improve teacher instruction and student learning. So we expect to be working with about 40 schools for the study. So we are inviting public schools that serve students in grade 6 to join us. 20 of the schools will receive the toolkit PD and resources in 24-25 school year, and the other 20 schools will receive the toolkit PD and supports in the 2025 to 26 school year. So we will kind of decide who will get the PD in 21st or the second through a lottery process. Next slide, please. So again, just want to reiterate some of the potential benefits for teachers here. So teachers in participating districts, they will receive training on the toolkit, and the training will be facilitated by REL Midwest staff virtually or by a locally trained co-facilitator. That's another option. Teachers also will receive resources to use in their classrooms to improve student outcomes, including the student tasks, assessment probes, and the interactive apps as well that Melinda just showed us. Teachers do need to participate in data collection with us, so we want to be transparent about that. So the data collection piece include like a pre and post survey. Teachers will be observed by our staff for once in the spring, and then teacher will help us administer a short assessment to students. So it's about 20 fraction problems. And then some of the teachers will be selected for a virtual interview. So for those activities, teachers will receive compensation for up to $150 for helping us with completing those data collection. Next slide. So for schools and districts, some potential benefits include, so they will receive resources to facilitate their professional development, including the detailed like a facilitation guide that Melinda just showed us. And then there will be leader resources to support teachers in helping them implement the practice guide recommendations. And then schools and districts can receive summaries of research findings specific to their school or their district. So for the sake of time today, we don't get into the details of the study in this webinar, but we can answer any questions you have about the toolkit and the study next. I do want to mention that we would also love to set up individual meetings with school districts who are interested in being part of the study so that we can go over the details and discuss how participation would look like for your district or your school. So if you are from SEA or another organization and you think in a district in your state might benefit from this opportunity, please have them reach out to us as well. We will provide information on how to reach us at the end of the webinar. So for now, Mia, can participants unmute them to ask questions directly, or?
I think they should be able to do a raise hand function, and then we can unmute them if they would like to ask that way, or they could enter a question in the chat for us as well.
Okay. For now, maybe we can pull the next slide up, which is how to contact us. You can scan the QR code on the screen here. Contact Jennifer, who is our recruitment lead. You can also visit our website or watch a short video about the toolkit. I think that's for the webinar. If you don't have a question for us, feel free to log off. But if you have questions, feel free to stay on and ask us as well. We will stay on the line to answer any questions.
Thank you all for joining us too. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You had a question, as a participant in the study, are the modules part of the process? Yes. You'll work through all 6 of the modules that are found in the toolkit as a teacher, and there'll be parts of them that you can use with your students as well. One thing, in May that didn't come up that I think is always good to point out, like this is not a curriculum to use with your kids. These are tools and strategies for you to use as a teacher in teaching fractions. So you would continue with your same regular math curriculum that you have. But this would just give you some more insights and things to use to make things go better with it.
Mhm. Yeah, just to come using any of the channel on the screen, contact us, and we can schedule a meeting directly with you or your district leaders to discuss this. I think we can wrap up.
Yep.
If there's no other question. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.